Red's Fly Shop, this is Bob. How may I help you today?
Look at that. Woo! Hey, welcome to the Red's Hunting Channel. If you are even thinking about buying Crispi Boots, you need to watch this whole review. My name is Joe Roeder. Many of you know me from our popular fly fishing channel, but I am a backcountry hunting fanatic. And these are all of my Crispi Boots. Actually, not even all my Crispi Boots. I've been wearing these things for years. And I'm a backcountry hunting fool. I get to fly fish for a living, and that way I get to hunt my brains out on all my time off. And I usually keep that on the down low because I'm constantly playing hooky from the fly fishing biz. But we sell and ship tons of Crispi Boots. Most of these models are going to be found on our website. We'll put links to the video description. And if they're not found on our website, chances are they're not one of our favorite Crispi Boots. I'm going to start with, we'll just go from end to end. And some of these I just have a history with, and I will give you feedback about them. If you decide you want to buy something we don't sell, go for it. You can buy it somewhere else. But we have what we think are the all-stars, the Crispi lineup that we ship every day from here from Reds. Okay, without further ado, let's start. We've got a Crispi Summit, and the Crispi Summit is an ultralight, breathable boot. Wore these for a long time. We'll show you a macro of the boot so you can see what the tread wear is like. Put several season on these. Now, originally I got these because they were ultralight and they had a very good lace-to-toe design. Here in the Cascades, where we hunt big game. We have everything: elk, mule deer, black bear, mountain lion, chukar, you name it, we're hunting it if it's steep and wild. But I like the lace-to-toe design, but for myself personally and my foot, the last on the Summit was just too big, and I would have a tough time getting that boot all the way down around my foot. Now, if it was cold out and I was wearing thick socks, that would be fine. But for me, there was just a little bit too much volume in the Summit, and I wore them, pretty much out. I thought they held up really well. If you have a fat foot, let's say, and I'm not talking about just necessarily width, but if your foot has a lot of volume in your joints and you have bigger ankles and a bigger foot volume, the Summit would be a good solution for you in that ultralight model. But several of us have had the Summit here. I wouldn't say we dislike them, but we've just found other boots that we prefer. The next up is going to be the Lapponia 2. Lapponia 2 has held up extremely well. Very impressed with this boot, probably because it has got essentially a full leather upper, and it doesn't have a lot of seams right in here where you get a lot of the toe flex. The sole has worn a little bit faster than I would have liked, and that is the Lapponia 2. That's the original version of the Lapponia. We now have a new version of the Lapponia, which I've just ordered, and that's the Lapponia 3, and they've updated that with an actual Vibram sole, and I believe that's called their claw sole. And by the way, if you want like specs on number of ounces and blah, 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 even flex ratings, just visit the product on our website that you'll see under or in the video description. There will actually be links there. But I think they solved that by coming out with an actual Vibram sole, and so I think that's going to provide just a little bit more rigidity, a little sharper edges for grabbing on steep terrain. And the Lapponia is a great kind of all-season boot for the Cascades because it's ultralight, but you also get the advantage of full leather lowers, which is just more waterproof than, say, a hybrid design like the Summit or the other ones I'm going to talk about. I mean, there's no substitute for well-greased leather. These are in bad need of a little maintenance right here. But the Lapponia has been great. Really happy to have the Lapponia 3 on the way here. Let's move on to a classic. These are my Nevadas. Again, it's been wet here. We've been doing a bunch of shed hunting in the snow for elk antlers recently. And the Nevada was the one I was wearing earlier in the season on some of the colder days. And this is the lightly insulated version of the Nevada. It's held up extremely well. I've probably had this boot for 5 years, but being that it's my lightly insulated boot, it becomes my late season or cold weather boot, or when I'm going to have extended glassing periods and I do want a little bit of insulation in my boot, so it doesn't get the playing time of some of the lighter weight boots. I am starting to have some rand separation here, but I have exceeded the value out of this boot. I've been extremely happy with it. One of the chief differences when you jump to, say, the Nevada from a Summit or a Lapponia or some of the others is the ABSS, the ankle bone support system. There's a foam that is really, we'll say thermal molded foam to make it sound technical. That might not be the exact term, but there's a foam that heats and eventually forms around your ankle, giving you a ton of support. So if you're doing big game hunting trips where you're going to have an extreme amount of weight on your back for big, either packing camp in or hauling meat or loads out, that ABBS system is really nice in the event you're going to have heavy loads. You're not getting that out of the Lapponia, you're not getting that out of the Summit, but you will get that out of the Nevada, and then you will get that out of the next boot I'm going to talk about. This has been my absolute favorite Crispi Boot, and this is the original Briksdal uninsulated GTX. These things have more miles, more mountains, more heavy haul outs. They're like my lucky boots, and that's the full grain leather version. I've had these for at least 3 full hunting seasons. They've held up amazingly well, and you're gonna see, we'll show you a close-up, you're gonna see the battle scars on these things. But they're a Flex 4 rating, so they're a very rigid boot. This is the one I trust when I know I'm gonna have potential heavy haul out. And the real low lace to toe design allows that boot to be built in a way where we can really suck it in around your foot and give you just like more of a sheep boot where I'm not gonna have any lateral movement of my foot inside the boot. They've been incredibly waterproof. The only time I've gotten leaks in these boots is when I get a lot of debris and junk down inside that toe sleeve there. And you need to clean that out and brush that out when you grease and treat the boots, because dirt will it transfers water much better than just a grease leather alone. So if you let that dirt really permeate that material under there, I have gotten small leaks in there, but that's much later in the boot's life. I mean, I don't expect a boot to be waterproof forever. Now let me inject a new model for 2024, and it's actually not a new model for 2024. Dallas, when did this boot come out?
About the same time the Altitude did, so.
Last year.
Yeah.
So late 2023 is when we ended up picking this boot up. And I'm gonna end up rotating out of my new Lapponias into these for the fall. And this is built on the same last as the original Briksdal, lace to toe design, kind of a sheep hunter's boot. Supposedly it's a slight bit more flexible, but it really feels like a Flex 4 rating to me. And this is the boot that I'm gonna have for my mid to late season mule deer hunts, anything where it's gonna be high, steep, wet, and I'm gonna have a load on my back. And this has that ABSS, the ankle bone support system. So I've got that foam in there that's eventually going to mold around my ankle and really hold my foot in place. So I don't have to crank my laces down super tight down here if I've got that boot laced up really well around my ankle, just like that. So, and this is going to add a bit of breathability to a boot where I wouldn't want to wear a full grain leather boot during, say, the warm portions of spring shed antler hunting, spring bear, early archery season. These don't get worn nearly as much just because they don't breathe. My feet wind up wet from the inside, but the Briksdal Mountain GTX is going to provide a little bit more breathability with that same kind of steep terrain capability, especially in the event you have a heavy haul out coming at you. The last boot that we'll talk about that I have experience with is the Thor 2. And these boots, these are kind of, I don't know if they're an enigma, but I got these for one very specific reason, and that's bivvy hunting for elk, where I'm moving all day long with anywhere from, say, 25 to 45 pounds, depending on what stage of the hunt I'm in, where I want a really stiff boot. I believe these are a Flex 4 rating, very stiff, but very light, very breathable for those dry times in the early season where I'm probably gonna have a load on my back all day, and I do want that little bit stiffer boot because my pack weight's really gonna soften that boot up. And then of course with elk, they're big critters. You're gonna be hauling them off the hill. You might be hauling 100 pounds at a time. So I like the Thors for a bivvy, like an elk hunting bivvy boot where I'm hiking all day with camp on my back, but I still want something light. And the waterproof the waterproofness of a full grain leather boot is an essential. So the Thor fits nicely in there, but to me, it's a little bit of a niche boot. I don't find them to be like, they're not like the Lapponia or I'll mention the Altitude. I don't have my old Altitudes here. I don't find them to be as cozy as the Altitude or the Lapponia. I don't enjoy putting them on as much, so those things have gotten kind of benched. So I'll grab another boot off the shelf here that I've done a previous review on, so you can watch or subscribe to this channel and go back and check that out. So the Altitude is a boot that everybody loves. It's very comfortable, it's fun to wear, you love putting it on. It's extremely breathable because of that really wide synthetic tongue. It does have, leather sides of the boot here, so it does have a lot of durability for talus rock and sticks, logs, that kind of stuff. So it's a very tough boot in that sense, and like I said, everybody loves wearing it. I think for like a scouting boot, spring bear, shed antler season, early archery elk, it'd be great. I'll be honest, I just destroyed these last year. By the time I got through my first mule deer hunt, I was starting to get, and you can see this on the other review, I was starting to get a little bit of unstitching that happened right in here, which ended up resulting in a hole. I do feel I got my value out of the boot, and if you're a person who's like, hey, I want a high-end boot, I want to be comfortable, I want to have that support, that rigidity, I want to hike for miles and climb I want to do 3,000 foot climbs every day, and I've had foot problems in the past, the Altitude might be the answer. It's not going to be nearly as durable as like the Briksdal or even the Lapponia or the Nevada, in my opinion. But I think for somebody who wants a guaranteed comfort boot that they're going to love wearing, and if you've had hot spots or break-in issues with other boots, the Altitude's a fabulous boot. It's very light, it's got a great sole. All of that is just skookum. I got one season out of mine, and that was kind of the max, but I'm an extreme user, and I put a lot of miles on these boots this last year. So that's kind of my wrap up on the Altitude. And one more note on the Altitude boot. This is the women's boot that we sell just because they are comfortable, they fit great. I'm getting a set of these for my wife. I've been dragging her along shed antler hunting, and she desperately needs a sturdier pair of footwear. So Mother's Day is coming up, and lucky her, she's getting a set of the women's Altitude. But we have a lot of women here that chucker hunt near our location in Central Washington in the Yakima Canyon, and we've just gotten great feedback from this boot. Easy break-in, very comfortable, and extremely happy with just the overall fit across a large number of users actually in the boot, but that is the women's Altitude. I don't have experience with some of the other models we sell. I'm sure that the guide boot and some of the others are fantastic, but those are boots that I do have a lot of personal time and experience with. Again, links to all the boots that we sell right there in the video description. Lastly, I can't stress this enough. You have to treat these boots properly. You have an investment. I think the Nevadas are great. I mean, that's probably our best selling boot. I don't know the exact numbers, but the Nevada is a really good example. You spend $440 on a boot. My problem that I had with the Altitude probably could have been remedied with a little bit better boot care. Get the right conditioning cream, clean your boots, do it right. There's a process for it. We'll try to share that on another YouTube video as to how we maintain our boots. And then for the synthetic boots, you want waterproof boots. Make sure to use the waterproof spray on boots like the Summit or the Altitude, the Thor, and the synthetic areas of the Briksdal Mountain GTX as well. That's my Crispi Boot wrap up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more genuine, real reviews on Crispi Boots.